Alright, welcome to the Cum Zone. This is devblog number, I don't know, who cares. But it's been a good week. I'm going to go over a few things that I've been looking at, and I'll just quickly dive into showing you kind of what I've been working on before I start rambling. So dismemberment is something that I have thought a lot about, and also zombie, noises and expressions. And I kind of wanted to get like a presence with these zombies. I wanted them to feel like they really had a presence in the game. So I kind of whipped together some rudimentary systems of zombie moans. So they moan sort of intermittently, randomly right now. And when they moan, they also have this expression, or this like kind of groan facial thing, which is just a blend shape. So I've been looking into ways to accomplish that, and trying to like do my due diligence and make sure I'm kind of going down the right path. I don't want to do anything that's going to be too expensive on the hardware if I can avoid it. And of course, I'm sure you've noticed the incredible cartoonish amounts of blood that are falling out of their heads. And that's another thing I'm working on. And in fact, the decals are actually one of the things I'm most excited about, because I've been looking for a way for a while to figure out like how to manage the amount of decals that are spawned on a client. And what I found is, I'm gonna disable the bots really quick. What I found is that I found a solution that I haven't been able to implement entirely with the blood from the zombies, but I could show you with a decal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just spawn a decal, and each time it does this, it's going to add it to an array. And once it exceeds a certain number, it's going to start subtracting or removing items in the beginning of that array. I think the number is 15 right now. So once I hit 15 or 16 or whatever, it'll start to subtract from the back. And the reason I wanted to have a system like this is because it's a lot cooler to kind of have a system like this, because then decals don't just disappear on a time limit, and because that just looks kind of lame, if they've got like I don't know, 10 seconds or 20 seconds, or I mean, I suppose you could raise the delay till they fade out or expire, but why do that? Because that's needlessly taxing on the hardware. Why not just make it so that if you keep creating new ones, it just subtracts from the end? Now 15 of course is a pretty low number. It's not going to be like that. But I was really excited today when I finally got this to work the way I wanted it to. But a new challenge also presented itself with respect to the zombie blood, because it's one thing to spawn it from a line trace from the player, but it's a little bit of a different beast when you're spawning blood on a zombie blueprint instance. So every time a zombie spawns, you're basically looking at an instance of a blueprint class, and every time a head explodes, it's kind of what I had before. Is it was just spawning a particle emitter. And what I was doing, I tried doing a similar thing that I did with what I just showed you, but what happened was that it created and added particles to an array, but it only really affected one instance. So say the blood spatter exceeded the number and it starts subtracting from the back. Well, it will do that, but it won't affect it when the next zombie's head explodes and starts spattering all over the place. And all of a sudden, you've got, you know, 100 or 50 or 300 or whatever dead zombies with blood everywhere, and there's no real garbage cleanup because there's no actual delay, or there's actually no duration for the decal to be alive in the server. So it would just stay in the world for forever, which is not good. But luckily, even though I don't have anything, I can't show it off today, but I do believe I have a solution. But first I'll show you kind of what the logic for the dismemberment kind of looks like. And this is sort of my take on it. I read a lot about different ways of doing it, and this is not by any means totally done or comprehensive, but it's working pretty well. Where's my event graph? Let's just go over here. Okay, so I think I could just delete these for now. These nodes are silly. So right now, there's a server. There's a function that executes on the server, which is the dismemberment, because you want other clients to see when you destroy a zombie's head or their legs or whatever. So it executes on the server, and then it replicates to all the machines. Now, one of the problems already is that it's replicating too many things to remote machines, like effects that should be not replicated. They should exist only on the client, and the server doesn't need to be concerned with them in the sense that, well, I don't know. I don't want to get into it, and you know, to be honest, I get tripped up. I trip over myself about this stuff all the time. But anyway, so we've got a switch on name, and I just made a list of basically all the bones that coincide with hiding the mesh when it's destroyed. Because what happens when the zombie is dismembered is that it's actually just setting the scale of a bone in the skeletal mesh to 0, basically. So it's basically just shrinking it. And depending on the actual bone that's hit, that will dictate which thing will be which bone will be hidden. So for the head, for example, is yeah, that makes sense, right? Right. I think so. So when the head is hit, it'll run through this little macro. It'll make sure that the zombie isn't dead. That's something I have just for right now, because I don't want people dismembering while the zombie's alive yet, because I think that should be based on crit chance or, you know, various things like that, you know, type of weapon being used. Right now, if the zombie's dead, this macro checks if they are, and if it's true, then it starts to increment in this integer, and if it surpasses, if it's greater than or equal to 1, which is, you know, obviously very low, it will actually perform the dismemberment. Now I could raise that number, so like they need to be hit 5 times before the dismemberment happens. Right now it's low because just for debugging purposes. And this is sort of the bread and butter of this dismemberment system, at least so far, is hide bone by name. This function is incredible. It takes an F name, which is just you just put in the name of the actual bone. The target is my skeletal mesh, which is, you know, my actual zombie, and you know, of course, that branch node, that, you know, that condition is in this macro here, this bone hit record. And then over here, it goes right into a spawn emitter attached. So it basically just takes another socket, which is basically I added another bone to the zombie, and I'll show you where it is. And I'm actually going to probably adding more as well, but it's called a head Gore socket, and it basically behaves like a bone in the skeleton, but it's like kind of custom, and I can put it somewhere else. And the reason why I have it is because when the emitters were spawning based on the head, they were sort of like lifted off of the dismembered neck, and it just looked kind of like, I don't know, it just looked kind of tacky, and I couldn't really find a way that I was happy with adjusting the position of it. And this is the best solution that I found. So there's a head Gore socket and there's a hand Gore socket, but I believe there will probably be some more Gore sockets for each corresponding, you know, dismembered part of the body or whatever. So it looks for that socket bone, that this new bone that I made, the head Gore socket. It gets the transform of that socket, and of course my skeletal mesh, my zombie skeletal mesh, and it throws that all into this function, spawn emitter attached, and it spawns this blood dismemberment, you know, spattering effect. I'll actually just show it to you here. It's a cool little you know, just burst of blood and guts, and it feeds all this information in. And then this is kind of the another cool part, is that it binds an event to on particle collide. So the neat thing about this particle system is that, and I know this is really small, but particles can actually collide, and they can collide with things, and you can sort of specify some certain things. So anyway, I'll solo this for a second. So this one is the emitter that has collision. So each one of these particles is going to create a collision event when it hits a static mesh, or in other words, like geometry in the world that's not moving during runtime is kind of a static mesh. So like all these checker floors and these walls, things that aren't really going to move around. So when it hits a static mesh, it's going to generate an overlap event, and it's going to and I set a few parameters so that it doesn't spawn every single time, because there's probably yeah, in fact, there's I believe there's 401 here that spawn. So I've sort of taken a fraction of that and allowed the game to produce a decal based on a fraction of those impacts, those collisions. So that's what this bind event to particle collide is. You know, I took the return of the spawn emitter and I created a custom event. And when one of these particles collides, it does this thing, which kind of may not seem intuitive, especially if you're sort of using Unreal. I was just spawning a decal, like what I normally would do is like spawn decal at location. I do something like this. There's no real reason in a lot of cases to have a decal actor, like a separate blueprint class, but this is actually intentional, and I'll show you why. And it goes back to the sort of the garbage cleanup of having too many decals in the world and not being able to subtract them from an array that I create. Because if I add these, oh, excuse me, I almost sneezed. It just wasn't working in this area. Adding instances of decals into array and then subtracting them. It won't work here because it'll only affect this zombie blueprint class, which is that's what we're in right now. We're just in one instance of a zombie blueprint class. So what I did is I created a new class called blood spatter, BP blood spatters, and it's got a custom event called declog or decal location, and it has takes a few inputs for location and a rot for a rotator. And the reason I had to do that is because the particle collision, in order for it to display kind of properly on the surface that it hits, you have to use this function called rotation from x vector, which basically takes the vector of the normal that was collided with the particle, and it creates a rotation from that x vector from that normal, and it basically through some sort of math magic that I don't know, it makes it so that it appears properly. So for example, if I shot here, you can see it already stretching because it's not perfect yet. But if the particle collides with, if it collides with the wall, well, it's also displaying naturally as it would on the floor. And the reason why it can do that is because it's taking the normalized vector of a point where it's hit, and then it's using that. It's creating a rotation from that, and that's going to be independent of like a world space. Well, I don't know. I honestly, that this stuff is a little too technical for me, so I'll just leave it there. But hey, it freaking works. So in that function, it spits out that rot or it's got an input, and that rot goes into this set world location and rotation. So it's kind of weird, and I don't know if there's a better way of doing this, but basically I'm spawning a blueprint actor called blood spatters, and then I'm immediately calling this function from within the instance of this blood spatter, and I'm adjusting the rotation based on this particle collision event that has all of these, all of these amazing things that I can use for whatever reason. If I wanted the bone name of something that it struck, well, there you go. Now I have something that if I wanted a filter versus on physical material, then I could have a whole variety of different decal actors spawning, depending on different conditions. So yeah, so that's kind of stage one, and this stage one is complete. Now why go further with this? Well, again, to remind you, I need all of these blood spatter decals. I need them all to be in an array, and then I need to subtract from the back of that array once they exceed a certain amount. Let's just say like 100. Okay, after 100, I want the client to be like, okay, this is too much. We're gonna start taking them out from the back. Now here's the rub about this, and I'm pretty confident that I'm on the right track here. The reason I can't, I'll say it this way. The way I can fix this is by creating another blueprint class and call it like decal listener or FX listener or something like that, and have an event dispatcher or a series of event dispatchers, so that every single time a blood spatter decal or whatever kind of effects that I want to add to this listening actor, that the listening actor hears that one's created, and it adds them to an array inside of the world. It seems like kind of like, why would you have to go through so much trouble? And to be honest, I'm not even exactly sure how I'm going to do it, but I know it's possible because I've done it with other in other tutorials with zombies. And the reason why you have to do it this way is because as a client, I don't have or as the zombie doesn't have like doesn't have a record of what's going on in the world, really. But the level blueprint or something that's owned by the server, that's independent of me or a zombie or me like enacting something on the world. God, I know that sounds so confusing. Yeah, I'm not gonna dive too much into this, but basically, if I can find a way for the world, the server, to listen to how many decals are being created in the server, and add all those things into an array, but do it on a per client basis, then, well, then again, I wouldn't even have to be run on the server because it's per client. But then there's a tricky part of like I want blood effects to appear when your teammate blows up a zombie. So that's going to have to be replicated to the remote client in some fashion. And so the server will execute it. It'll run on the owning client, and the owning client will be sort of sifting through and listening for all these things being created, adding them to an arrays, subtracting from the back of them, and taking care of like garbage cleanup. So that won't be a gosh, well, I'll just have to look into it because it's a lot. So, but let's see what's going on with multiplayer, because I think it's worth looking at kind of what's happening with the sort of effects that the sort of functions that I've been working on this past excuse me, this past week. Okay, so that's good. Both clients see the dismemberment, and in fact, I'll just like, ooh, that's odd. Let me make sure that okay. Seemed a little funky there for a second. So I'm gonna spawn a actor here and make sure that we can both see all of our dismemberments. Okay. Okay. Oop. And I'll make sure that okay, so now I'm getting a warning here. So, process remote function, no owning connection for actor, BP zombie C. Okay. So I believe that is. Okay, so I've hurt him. Now let me go into the client. Okay, so I'm shooting these dead zombie on the client, and it's telling me that there's no owning connection. So let's find out. Let's find out what's happening on death. Okay, so we've got an instigator, and that's feeding in my the person who hit zombie. Okay, and then authority, it's over here. Okay, so do I need to use this input here? Maybe I do. Maybe if I check if this is valid. This may not do anything because it's not. I'm not getting like a typical error that I would get, like an access none thing, which happens quite a bit. Okay, so process remote function. No owning connection for actor. Function show body parts remote. will not be processed. Okay, so if show body parts remote will not be processed, then I'll get the owner of this. I'm in the zombie blueprint class right now, and I'm going to say, I'm going to drag out the return, and I'm going to say is valid, because I want to see if the, I don't want to run this function unless, and I'm going to get rid of this. Oh, wait, did I need that? No, I didn't need that. I'm going to get rid of this, that thing over there, and I'm going to say, is the owner of the zombie valid? And then let's see if I get a warning. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so let's see, shoot that guy, and then let's start shooting him. Okay. That's very odd. I'm not getting. Oh, I see. I'm not getting any. I'm not getting any effects because there is no valid owner. Okay. Well, I've had similar errors before, and to be honest, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head how to solve this. Luckily, it's just a warning, so it's not really game breaking, but I am still gonna have to address it because only connection for actor. There's no owning connection. I wonder, I just want to see one thing. I want to say spawn bots 1. I wonder if the level spawns the bots as opposed to the server client. I wonder if that would change anything. So let's see, I'll shoot these guys and bring in my client. Okay, no, that doesn't make a difference. Okay, that's fine. I'll definitely be looking into that. I didn't double check some certain things that were happening in multiplayer. But that's fine. So there's a lot of things that need work, especially with, you know, variations in the zombies. I want to have really cool kind of groans. A lot of these effects were kind of whipped together, and part of the reason I like to do like a first pass that's very fast is because almost invariably whenever I get something working like this, I find out ways I could do it again and just kind of have a better, more tighter result. But I'm happy with the fact that they're just they're starting to feel like they're really populating the world, and they have more personality in them. There's also I was trying to get the actual limbs to break off instead of just disappearing. I was trying to get that to work today, but I couldn't, and the reason why is basically that I think what I'm going to have to do, because I was able to make them spawn, it just didn't look very good. I think what I'm gonna have to do is basically spawn a dismemberable mesh when the zombie dies. Because right now the zombie is alive and it's playing an animation through an animation blueprint. And when it dies, it's set to simulate physics. So it basically takes the same skeletal mesh and it starts simulating, doing a physics simulation. But what I think I need to do is despawn the zombie on death and spawn in its place a dismemberable mesh that has properly you know, sort of pre-severed body parts with the proper textures. You know, when you remove the leg, for example, you can see like a bone or, you know, shit like that. That way it'll look kind of a lot more believable when they do die. And so when they're dead and you're interacting with them, you're not interacting with really the same zombie. You're interacting with an entirely different entity at that point. So one of the challenges of that is probably going to make it as seamless as possible. But we'll see. I'll probably be doing some tests this week and improving on the blood and the, you know, the death animations. Because right now they really are falling in a very predictable way, and it's kind of weird because they're basically what's happening is when they die, they play an animation for like 0.2 seconds, and then after that, or 0.1 seconds or something, and then after that period they start simulating physics. The reason I do that is just so they don't kind of like collapse like silly, like Woody, you know, from Toy Story or something, because that's what they look like if I don't try to blend in some sort of, you know, interesting animation. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and when I figure out ways of dealing damage, and you know, if there's going to be, I don't know if there's going to be a crit chance or whatever. A lot of dismemberment will probably be weapon specific. You know, I don't know how many pistols are actually going to blow someone's head off. You know, so, and I haven't really decided on melee weapons, though I'm strongly in favor of that. I haven't figured out how I'm going to implement them in this game yet. So yeah, it's good shit. And oh, and look at this, I'm dying. No, I'm dying. Oh, and check this out. So when I die, this cool end game screen. Milo consume you. Bum, bum, bum. And then after a few seconds, it'll fart you back into the lobby, and this is like, I'm actually pretty excited about, because no more bullcrap menu from that tutorial that I did. Now you're going to make your decisions based on moving around the world instead of navigating some sort of funky UI. And I think this is like way more fun, because I think people, you know, I know I like it when you just throw me in the game, just let me move around. Like, I don't want to go through lists or whatever. So if you basically just highlight, you know, one of these, which is very rudimentary at this point, you choose your character, and then when you want to play the game, then you go in there and it'll load the main world. And it also properly stores your character selection. So, you know, when you die, So when you die, you will be brought back here, and whatever thing you choose here will be carried over to the server. So if you're a client and you're on your friend's playing with your friend, and this will be carried through. So yeah, I think I've probably piled on enough, but there's always too much to cover in a week to condense it all into such a short video. But that's the plan, Stan. And this week, I imagine I'm hoping to get some cool stuff done with zombies, and yeah, the 18th of this month will be the 6-month goal of having an early pre-release build. My goal was to have a game basically in 6 months, and that's the 18th of this month will be 6 months. It's really the beginning in terms of the broader this project. It's really the beginning, but that was my goal. So stay tuned, and if you're interested in getting access to an early build and you want to play test and be a part of the development of this game, then definitely leave a comment, or I don't know, PM me or whatever, join my Discord, or DM me on Twitter or something. But yeah, with that said, I love you, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and stay fresh, drink lots of water, and see you soon. Toodaloo, bye-bye.